And this is going to be true of valence as well, because valence is associated with these semicircular canals. So, when you go through this opening, you go into the taking off this piece of the temporal bone. You go into the auditory canal, which is the external auditory meatus. So this is the auricle or the pinna. That tunnel through this piece of temporal bone is the external auditory meatus. And the pinna, the external auditory meatus, and the skin-covered side, the tympanum facing the canal, make up the external ear. All right, then you hit the eardrum, which is the tympanum or tympanic membrane. Use tympanum. And that's what we call the eardrum. And to me, it sort of reminds me of like a drum head, like timpani drums. Do y'all know what timpanis are? You're playing with the little, boom, boom. They have kind of an interesting sound. But anyway, this would be the tympanum. And behind the tympanum is an air-filled cavity called the tympanic cavity. And this air-filled tympanic cavity communicates with an air-filled pharyngotympanic tube to the upper portion of the pharynx, which is the nasopharynx. The middle ear cavity or tympanic cavity contains 3 tiny little bones. And the 3 tiny little bones are the ear ossicles, and the malleus, the incus, and the stapes. And the malleus is the one that's attached to the eardrum. And then the middle ossicle in the middle ear cavity is the incus. And then finally, one shaped like a stirrup called the stapes. So let's pull this out, and we can see 2 of the 3 ossicles, the first 2. And I honestly remember starting from the tympanum, M-I-S, so don't ever miss that order. So the ossicle that's attached to the tympanum is the malleus. And this one right here in the middle is the incus. And finally, the third ossicle is literally kind of just molded, because it's a plastic model, to a flexible window on the side of the vestibule of the inner ear called the oval window. So the malleus attached to the tympanum, the incus, and finally the one that looks like a stirrup, the stapes. And these are the 3 ossicles found within the air-filled and mucous membrane line middle ear cavity or tympanic cavity. Okay. The inner ear consists of 3 parts and doesn't consist of the stapes. That's just molded to the side of the vestibule. But the stapes would be one of the 3 ear ossicles in the middle ear cavity, part of the middle ear. But the inner ear consists of 3 parts. You have the 3 semicircular canals. And by the way, if you take a look at these, they all literally are oriented at 90-degree angles with respect to one another. So there's what? You have the frontal plane, the sagittal, and the transverse. Look at this. Sagittal, frontal or coronal, and the transverse plane. So what's kind of cool is, like a gyroscope, these are filled with fluids. And when the head moves, the fluids in those 3 canals slosh around in such a way and stimulate sensory receptors that always let the cerebellum know the position of the head with respect to the rest of the body. So these actually have fluids that move when the head moves, and the information about where these fluids are as they move actually can be plotted on a 3-dimensional axis within the cerebellum, so the cerebellum knows the position of the head relative to the rest of the body. It's just kind of interesting. But anyway, these are the semicircular canals, and they're coming off the vestibule, which is the middle portion of the inner ear. And this part right here that looks like a snail's shell is the cochlea. Of course, the front part of that's off. There's 2 branches make up the vestibulocochlear nerve, cranial nerve number 8. There's a branch off the cochlea, so that's the cochlear branch. And this branch actually has been cut, but it would be coming off the vestibule, so that would be the vestibular branch. And the vestibular branch and the cochlear branch fuse to form the vestibulocochlear nerve. Okay. There is only one structure that I would ask you about on the lab test tomorrow off this model that you can't see, and it's the oval window beneath the stapes. There's another flexible membrane that's kind of roundish, and it's called the round window. And on some models it's colored, this one is not. But this would be the round window on the side of the cochlea. Beneath the stapes is the oval window beneath the stapes. But the oval window is on the side of the vestibule, and it's beneath the stapes. So what's the name of this stirrup-shaped bone? The stapes. The stape sits on a flexible connective tissue membrane on the side of the vestibule. The oval window, it's called oval window even though it's a membrane. And what's the name of this round shape right there on the side of the cochlea? That's the round window. Even though it's not a window, it's not an opening, it's a membrane. It's just called the round window. And that's it. So you want to do the